Greetings my lovelies, and thank you for stopping by the circle today. Today's video is a book review, actually off of an audiobook, which is based off of a video game that I absolutely love. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, then clearly you have never heard of Assassin's Creed. And let me tell you, my friend, you're missing out on that one. But I digress. We are here today not to talk about the awesome video game that it is. We're here to talk about this lovely young adult book that I found called The Last Descendants by Matthew Kirby. So let's roll right on into it. Now there have been novelizations of the video games before. I've read those, or some of those before, and they're like, whatever. If you played the game, reading the novels really doesn't give you anything new. However, The Last Descendants is an entirely separate story from the video games themselves, which is really cool. And even more so, it's also a comic book, which I did not know until I was looking up images for this video. And sadly, I could not find any images of the individualized characters themselves. They were already in the comic panel, and I didn't feel like dealing with that. So anyways, let's go ahead and get started talking about this book. Now, from what I can gather, each book kind of focuses on a different kid. So the first book, this book, focuses mainly on Owen, whose father died in prison after being arrested for robbing a bank. He doesn't believe that his father did it. He wants to prove that it's true. So he wants to go to Abstergo to get into his father's memories in order to see it and prove his innocence. Now, I feel like I must backtrack a little bit for those of you who are not familiar with the premise of Assassin's Creed, and it's that within our bodies, we carry the genetic memory of all of our ancestors. Abstergo has this machine called the Animus that allows you to live the life of your ancestors. You can't change the past, you just kind of roll right along with it. Now that's the basic premise of this game with some other features that I'm going to talk about later, but that's the basic setup. When Owen goes to Abstergo to try to get it done, he finds out that he cannot do it because the memories that he wants to access happened after he was born. So you can only see your ancestors up until the point that you were born. So while he's down and out and talking to his friend Javier, who has a big secret that has kind of changed how he interacts with the world, their school's IT guy, Monroe, says, well, hey, I have an Animus. Why don't you try it? And so he gets them to come to his Animus. Now that's the starting incident for this whole story. So I'll have to stop and talk about all the other characters before I talk about my overall thoughts of the story. So you have the two representatives from the Templars and the Assassins. I don't really remember the names. You don't really get to meet them much until the very end of the story, so I don't want to talk about them. The main characters in this book are the 6 kids and Monroe, who is kind of shady if you really ask me. But of the 6 kids, we have Owen, Javier, Grace and David, who are a brother and sister. We have Natalia and Sean, who's in a wheelchair. Now the reason why these kids have been brought together is because their ancestors have constantly cross paths, and the more people that you have that cross the path, the stronger and clearer the memory can be. And the reason why their families have been crossing paths is because they have also been on the Assassin and Templar side, battling over this piece of Eden. Now, a piece of Eden is something from an alien precursor race that used to live on Earth but died out when the asteroids hit or something to that effect. I don't know, it's been years since I played the game. But anyways, they have magic effects. So in the Assassin's Creed game, it's always been, especially in the earlier ones, I haven't played anything much past Syndicate, and I haven't even finished Syndicate, truth be told. Hey, life gets busy. But it's always been the apple, which takes away summon free will. And I know there's one called the Shroud, which can heal anything. But this one is the trident, and it's 3 daggers that can make someone believe in you, do what you tell them to, or fear you. And when they're all 3 together in like this mighty trident or whatever, you can rule the world. I think the last person they said who held it was Alexander the Great. So anyways, these kids' ancestors have crisscrossed so much that if they join up, they can really find it and figure out where it's at. Now, Monroe wants them to find it just as much as the Templars and the Assassins do. He says he wants to hide it from everyone, but I really don't trust him. He's very shady. Like I said, I mean, he's a stoner dude who essentially kidnaps kids in a van to hook them up to a machine. I got a bad feeling in my belly. But each of these kids kind of has their own issues and drama and things of that nature that they want to deal with. And of course, probably if it's keeping in with Assassin's Creed fashion, they will learn something through their time in the Animus. So those are the characters really in and of a nutshell. We really didn't get to spend too much time with them because we did spend a large chunk of the time getting them to the Animus and then being in the Animus during the 1800s draft riots in New York. So let me just go ahead and talk about how I felt about this book, in all honesty. Now, I love Assassin's Creed. Other than Tomb Raider and Spyro and like the old school like Sega Nintendo stuff, like this was one of the first games that I absolutely just loved. I distinctly remember seeing the commercial for Assassin's Creed 3, which is my all-time favorite, and I will play that sucker on repeat. Don't at me. I love Native American history and I love colonial American history. So hey, win-win, right? But I don't always have time to play the games. So it is nice to have this content to fill my itch for Assassin's Creed without having to spend days in front of my TV playing a game, which I don't mind to do. But when you're also writing and teaching and trying to have a social life, video games kind of fall to the wayside. Plus, video games tends to be my husband's only outlet, and I feel bad taking it away from him. So, yeah, you know, it is what it is, the life of a wife, you know? But I thoroughly enjoyed it. The guy who was reading it, because I did listen to it as an Audible book, because that's kind of how I'm trying to get to read more books this year, because I can like play it as I'm folding laundry or as I'm cleaning up the house, and I can enjoy it, and what I'm doing is so mindless that, you know, it doesn't distract me. But the guy who read it was really good, with the minor exception of like the female voices, but hey, it's a dude and that's really kind of hard to do. Female readers sometimes tend to have issues like in making the men sound like men. But at least their accents and how they spoke and their tones were all different enough that it was very enjoyable. And I thoroughly enjoyed it for what it was. It was very much an intro piece. And so I am interested in seeing where this story takes place. I do know that the next step that they go to is China, which is pretty cool because I don't think I've seen any games in China other than a really 2D one that didn't get a lot of reviews, so I didn't pay attention to it. So if you've read this book or this series or really any of the other Assassin's Creed books, drop a like and comment down below to let me know. And if you are a fan of the Assassin's Creed as well, you can follow along on my social media and reach out to me that way, and maybe we can get together for a game night. I don't know, something. It doesn't have to be virtual. That is all the time that I have for you today, and I will see you all next week. Bye.